she spent her last coin feeding a starving old woman. But that single act of kindness would expose hidden secrets, false accusations, and change her destiny forever. The sun hung lazily in the sky that morning, spilling golden light over the noisy market. Traders shouted the prices of tomatoes, onions, and beans as if their lungs had been designed only for that. The smell of fried plantain mixed with the odor of dried fish and sweat, filling the air with a confusing perfume of survival. Stacy wiped her forehead with the edge of her faded scarf. She was only 22, but her tired eyes looked older. She carried a small basket with barely anything inside, some leftover vegetables and a few grains of rice wrapped in paper. Behind her skipped Ruth, her 12-year-old sister, humming a tune as if she could sing away their hunger. "Stacy, are we going to eat beans today?" Ruth asked, her voice hopeful. Stacy forced a smile, hiding the ache in her chest. "Maybe," she said. Truth was that their money was almost finished. She had 1 coin left. Sitting quietly in her pocket, like a secret too painful to touch. Just as they turned the corner of the market, Stacy noticed something unusual. Near a stall selling oranges sat an old woman, her back bent like a bow, her face pale and wrinkled. She wore a torn wrapper and clutched her stomach as if trying to silence the hunger inside. People walked past her, tossing careless glances. Some even muttered, "Another beggar," and went on. But Stacy stopped. The old woman's eyes, sunken and tired, lifted to meet hers. They were not just hungry eyes. They were pleading, quiet, almost embarrassed. Stacy's heart twisted. She knew that look. It was the same one Ruth gave her on nights when there wasn't enough food. "Ruth," Stacy whispered, "wait here." She walked to a nearby food stall and placed her last coin on the wooden table. "Please," she said, her voice low, "give me whatever this can buy." The trader sighed, looking at the coin as though it were a joke. Finally, he scraped together some leftover boiled yam and a tiny portion of bean cakes. Stacy took it, her hands trembling. That food could have been their dinner, yet without hesitation, she carried it to the old woman. "Mama," Stacy said softly, kneeling beside her, "please eat." The old woman's lips shook. She opened her mouth as if to speak, but instead, tears filled her eyes. She took the food slowly, as though afraid it might vanish. "Child," she whispered, her voice rough like sandpaper, "why give me this when you clearly need it yourself?" Stacy smiled faintly. "Because nobody should be this hungry. Eat, Mama." Ruth tugged at her sister's dress. "Stacy, what about us?" she asked, her tone innocent but sharp like a knife. Stacy placed a hand on Ruth's head. "Don't worry, my dear. We'll manage." She didn't add how. The old woman ate with trembling hands, every bite a mixture of gratitude and shame. When she finished, she looked at Stacy for a long moment. "You are different," she said slowly. "One day, child, the kindness you give will come back to you." Stacy only nodded, not believing her. Words didn't fill empty stomachs. As the sisters walked home that evening, Ruth's voice was small. "Stacy, I'm still hungry." "I know," Stacy said, squeezing her hand. Inside, her heart burned with frustration. Why was life so unfair? Why did some people waste food while others counted coins like treasures? She wanted to scream at the sky, but instead she walked on silently. Back at their small wooden house, Stacy cooked the tiny scraps they had left. The smell of watery porridge filled the room, though it was hardly enough for both. She gave the bitter portion to Ruth and pretended she wasn't hungry. That night, as Ruth slept peacefully, Stacy lay awake, staring at the ceiling. Something about that old woman bothered her. Not just the hunger, not just the sadness, something hidden behind her eyes. Something she couldn't explain. Little did Stacy know that frail woman she had fed at the market was not who she seemed. And the coin Stacy had spent so freely was about to change the direction of her life forever. The morning sun crawled slowly through Stacy's tiny window, drawing lines of light on the cracked wall. She rose quietly, careful not to wake Ruth, who was curled up like a kitten, clutching the corner of their thin blanket. Stacy's stomach rumbled loudly, reminding her that yesterday's watery porridge had long disappeared. Still, there was no time to complain. She had work. Stacy tied her scarf tightly and stepped into the busy street. She worked at a large clothing company in town, a place filled with bright fabrics and endless gossip. The pay was small, but it was all she had to keep food on the table. As she walked, she thought about the old woman from the market. Her wrinkled face, those strange eyes that carried both pain and wisdom, stayed in Stacy's mind like a song that refused to end. When Stacy reached the factory gates, she noticed something unusual. Workers were whispering in groups, their voices filled with excitement and fear. "He's here," one said, "the new boss." Stacy frowned. New boss? Nobody had told her anything. Inside the main hall, the workers lined up nervously. Then he walked in, tall, broad-shouldered, dressed in a sharp suit that screamed power. Joseph Adams. His face was stern, his eyes cold, scanning the workers as if weighing their worth like bags of rice. The hall went silent. Even the sewing machines seemed to hold their breath. "This factory," Joseph's voice boomed, "will no longer tolerate laziness or dishonesty. If you want to stay, you must work hard. If not, the door is wide open." Murmurs spread through the crowd. Some nodded in fear, others rolled their eyes quietly. Stacy stood still, her heart pounding. Something about Joseph unsettled her. Not just his authority, but the way his eyes looked, like he had built walls around his soul. The rest of the day, workers whispered stories about Joseph. Some said he once fired 10 people in one morning. Others swore he never smiled, even at weddings. If laughter is food for the soul, one woman joked, his soul must be starving. Everyone laughed, but nervously, as though afraid Joseph might appear behind them. Stacy, meanwhile, kept her head down. She had no energy for gossip. Every thread she sewed was a prayer for Ruth's school fees, for tomorrow's meal, for survival. But trouble always finds those who try to stay quiet. During lunch break, a group of jealous co-workers gathered at a corner. One of them, Clara, sneered. "Look at Stacy, always acting like she's holy, helping people, smiling at everyone. Let's see how long that lasts under Joseph." Another worker chuckled. "Maybe she'll charm him with her innocent face." Stacy heard the whispers, but pretended not to. She had grown used to it. People often mocked her kindness, as if being good was a weakness. Still, their words left a small bruise in her heart. That evening, as she walked home, she passed by the market again. To her shock, she spotted the same old woman, Naomi, sitting near the fruit stalls. This time, she looked even weaker, her thin hands trembling as she tried to lift a cup of water. Stacy hurried over. "Mama, are you okay?" Naomi gave her a faint smile. "Ah, my child, you again." Stacy knelt beside her. "You shouldn't be out here like this. Where is your family? Don't you have anyone to care for you?" Naomi looked away, her eyes clouded with something more than just age. "Sometimes the people you expect to stay close are the ones who push you away." Stacy frowned but didn't press further. Everyone had secrets, and clearly Naomi's was too heavy to share. Instead, she gave her some water from her own bottle and sat with her for a while. When Stacy finally returned home, Ruth was waiting, tapping her foot. "Stacy, you're late. I thought a lion ate you." Stacy laughed weakly. "No lion, just work." Ruth squinted. "You look worried. Is everything all right? Stacy ruffled her hair. Don't worry about me. But deep down, Stacy was worried. Joseph's eyes, Naomi's hidden sadness, the whispers at work. It all felt like pieces of a puzzle she couldn't yet see. And if life had taught Stacy anything, it was this. Puzzles always hide a picture you don't expect. The factory buzzed with the usual noise of sewing machines, clattering scissors, and workers' chatter. But beneath the hum of fabric and thread, something darker was brewing. Stacy could feel it, like a storm waiting to break. She sat at her table, carefully stitching the hem of a dress meant for an important customer. Her hands moved steadily, but her thoughts wandered back to Naomi's sad eyes, Joseph's cold stare, and Ruth's innocent questions. Sometimes, Stacy felt like life was a book where she only got to read one line at a time. The ending was always hidden. Clara, the sharp-tongued worker who always seemed to be watching Stacy, leaned close to another woman and whispered loudly enough for Stacy to hear. Let's see how long Miss Kindheart survives under our new boss. The woman giggled. Maybe Joseph will fire her first. She's too slow. Stacy bit her lip and kept working. Words couldn't feed Ruth, and they couldn't pay rent either. She chose silence, even when her heart wanted to fight back. By midday, the tension in the factory had grown thick. Joseph had been walking around the work floor, inspecting stitches, checking threads, asking hard questions. His footsteps echoed like a drumbeat of judgment. When he stopped near Stacy's table, her hands froze. Your stitches, Joseph said, pointing at her work. Clean, precise, better than most. Stacy blinked, surprised. A compliment? From him? She muttered. Thank you, sir, barely above a whisper. But while her heart fluttered with a tiny spark of hope, Clara's eyes darkened with envy. That spark of praise was more dangerous than a fire in a hay barn. The next day, the storm broke. Just before closing time, a loud cry filled the hall. My money! Where's my money? It was Mrs. Kayla, one of the senior workers. She waved her bag in the air. I had 5,000 naira in here, and now it's gone. Panic spread. Workers gathered, whispering, who could have taken it? Joseph stormed into the room like thunder. His eyes swept across everyone. Nobody leaves until we find the thief. He ordered the bags of all workers to be checked. One by one, people brought their belongings forward. Murmurs filled the air. Some laughed nervously, some sweated. When it came to Stacy's turn, her hands trembled as she placed her old bag on the table. She had nothing but a book, a scarf, and a half-eaten piece of bread. But when Joseph opened the side pocket, gasps filled the room. There it was, the missing 5,000 naira. Aha! Clara shouted, her voice sharp with fake shock. I knew it! Miss Kindheart is not so kind after all. The crowd buzzed like angry bees. Some shook their heads in disappointment. Others whispered, so she's the thief. Stacy's eyes widened in horror. No, I didn't put that there. I don't know how the money got inside. Joseph's face turned cold, unreadable. Do you expect us to believe that? Tears burned Stacy's eyes. She looked around, desperate for someone, anyone to defend her. But the room was filled with folded arms and accusing stares. Only silence answered her cries. Clara smirked, whispering just loud enough. Even the quiet ones can be snakes. Stacy wanted to scream, but her throat tightened. She had been poor, hungry, mocked, but never accused of stealing. Her heart felt like it had been kicked into the dirt. Joseph finally spoke. Stacy, theft is a serious crime. We cannot ignore this. Until this is resolved, you are suspended. Her knees wobbled. She wanted to protest, to fight, but words stumbled over each other in her throat. Please, sir. I didn't do this. Joseph didn't reply. He turned and walked away, leaving her standing there, her world crumbling. When Stacy reached home that evening, Ruth ran to her with a smile. "Stacy, did you bring food?" The question sliced deeper than any insult. Stacy dropped her bag and hugged Ruth tightly, tears streaming silently. Ruth pulled back, confused. "What's wrong?" "Nothing, my dear," Stacy lied, wiping her face. "Just tired." But Ruth wasn't fooled. "Did someone hurt you at work? Tell me." "And I'll bite them like a dog." Stacy laughed weakly through her tears. "Don't worry, my little lioness, I'll be fine." That night, she couldn't sleep. She replayed the scene over and over. Clara's smirk, Joseph's hard eyes, the whispers. Who had planted that money in her bag? Why? Her thoughts drifted to Naomi, that frail woman with mysterious eyes. Stacy remembered her words. "The kindness you give will come back to you." Could that ever be true? Because right now, kindness felt like a curse. Stacy walked through the market with heavy feet, the kind of heaviness that came not from walking, but from shame. Each step felt like she was dragging chains no one could see. People at the factory now saw her as a thief. Even though she was innocent, their eyes carried judgment like stones ready to be thrown. She reached the same corner where Naomi usually sat. The old woman was there again, her frail body bent forward, her fingers tracing invisible shapes on the ground. Her face lit up when she saw Stacy. "My child," Naomi said gently, "you look like someone who has been fighting shadows all night." Stacy dropped to her knees beside her. She didn't know what compelled her to speak. Maybe it was because the old woman reminded her so much of her mother, after she died and after her father left them. "Mama, they accused me of stealing. They found money in my bag, money I never touched. Now everyone thinks I'm a thief." Naomi's wrinkled hand reached out and rested on Stacy's trembling fingers. Ah, the world is quick to believe lies when told with loud voices. But truth, child, truth has a way of standing up even when everyone pushes it down. God will vindicate you. Tears welled in Stacy's eyes. But what if he doesn't? What if they never believe me? Naomi chuckled softly, a surprising sound for such a weak woman. "Then you walk with your head high, because guilt lives in the eyes of the guilty, not the innocent." Stacy wiped her face and laughed weakly. "You sound like you've fought this battle before." Naomi's eyes darkened for a moment, shadows passing over them like clouds hiding the sun. "More than once," she whispered, almost to herself. Then she quickly changed the subject. "But tell me, who accused you?" "Clara. She's my coworker," Stacy said bitterly. "She and the others, they hate me because I don't fight back." Naomi nodded slowly. "Kindness often makes enemies of those who don't understand it. But don't let their poison turn you bitter. Remain the light that you are." Stacy sighed. "That's easier said than done, Mama. Ruth and I, we barely survive as it is. If I lose this job," her voice cracked. "What will we eat?" Naomi pressed her hand tighter. "Do not fear. The hand that feeds others will never stay empty for long." For a while, they sat in silence, the busy market moving around them, children running with roasted corn, women haggling loudly, men carrying heavy baskets. Life went on, indifferent to Stacy's pain. Naomi broke the silence. "Tell me, child, do you know who owns that factory you work in?" Stacy shook her head. "No, we only see the managers. But a new boss came yesterday, Joseph Adams, cold as ice." At that name, Naomi's eyes flickered with something unspoken. Her lips parted slightly, then closed again. "Joseph Adams," she repeated slowly, her voice carrying a weight Stacy couldn't explain. "You know him?" Stacy asked, curious. Naomi hesitated, then forced a small smile. "Everyone in this town knows the Adams family. They are rich, powerful, but power, child, is not always happiness. Stacy tilted her head. What do you mean? Naomi didn't answer directly. Instead, she said, some people wear crowns on their heads, but chains on their hearts. Don't let the suit fool you. Sometimes, even kings are prisoners. Stacy frowned, puzzled. Naomi spoke like someone who knew Joseph personally, but she didn't press further. The old woman seemed fragile, and Stacy didn't want to burden her with more questions. Instead, Stacy stood to leave. I should go, Mama. Ruth is waiting. She'll think I've been eaten by a crocodile again. Naomi laughed, the sound raspy but warm. Ah, children. They believe in crocodiles and monsters. She squeezed Stacy's hand one last time. Remember, my child, everything has a season. This one, too, will come to an end. That evening, back at home, Ruth met Stacy at the door, arms crossed dramatically. Finally, did you fall asleep in the market, or were you kidnapped by armed robbers? Stacy chuckled, dropping her basket. Armed robbers wouldn't waste their time on me. Ruth's eyes sparkled with mischief. Maybe not. You're too skinny, and we don't have anything for them to steal. Both sisters burst into laughter, the kind that filled the tiny house with life. For a moment, the darkness around Stacy lifted. But when Ruth finally slept, Stacy lay awake, Naomi's words echoing in her mind. Don't let the suit fool you. Even kings are prisoners. What did Naomi mean? Why did her eyes react to the name Joseph Adams? And why did she sometimes speak as if her heart carried a history too heavy to share? The days after the theft accusation were heavy for Stacy. Every time she was called into the factory for questioning, the whispers followed her like shadows. There she is, someone would mutter. The thief. Even those who once smiled at her now turned their faces away. Clara, of course, enjoyed every moment. She walked around with her chin high, as if she had personally saved the factory from disaster. If it were me, she said loudly one morning, I would never let a thief come back to work. Stacy pretended not to hear, but her heart ached. She wasn't fired, only suspended, and Joseph had promised the matter would be investigated. Still, no one seemed interested in finding the truth. At home, Ruth kept her company. The little girl made silly faces to make Stacy laugh, or told dramatic stories about pirates and villains who were defeated by brave sisters. Stacy would laugh, but when night came, the fear returned. How long could they survive without her pay? One afternoon, Ruth suggested, Stacy, maybe you should sell mangoes in the market. You'd be good at shouting prices. Stacy chuckled. You mean I should scream, mango for 100 until I lose my voice? Ruth grinned. Yes, your voice is loud enough to chase away flies. For a moment, they both laughed. But deep down, Stacy knew things were serious. Mangoes wouldn't pay rent. She needed her job back. But at the factory, darker plans were already in motion. Clara and 2 other workers gathered in the storage room. We almost got rid of her last time, Clara hissed. But the boss is still not sure. We need to make sure he has no choice. What do you mean? Asked one of the others nervously. We set her up, Clara said, her eyes gleaming. Properly this time. If she's caught red-handed, even that old woman we saw her befriending in the market won't be able to save her. The others hesitated, but Clara's words carried poison. Do you want Joseph to notice her more than us? Already he praised her stitches once. If we don't act, she'll rise while we stay crawling. Greed and envy are strong allies. Soon the women agreed. A week later, Stacy was called back to work. Her heart pounded as she entered the factory. Joseph's cold voice had told her, You are still under watch. Don't give me another reason to doubt you. Yes, sir, Stacy replied quietly. That day, she worked harder than ever, her fingers flying over the fabric, her eyes fixed on every stitch. She ignored the whispers, the giggles, the side glances. All she wanted was to prove herself. But fate, or rather, Clara, had other plans. Near the end of the shift, a scream echoed through the hall. "My necklace! My gold necklace is missing!" It was Mrs. Olivia, one of the supervisors. Panic spread again, like wildfire. Joseph arrived quickly. His face dark. "Not again," he muttered. "Search everywhere." The workers obeyed. Drawers were opened, baskets checked, even the trash bins turned upside down. Then came the words Stacy feared most. "Check her bag," Clara said, pointing straight at Stacy. Stacy's stomach dropped. She clutched her bag tightly. "No, not again." Joseph's sharp eyes turned to her. "Bring it here." With trembling hands, Stacy handed over her worn-out bag. Joseph opened it slowly. And there, lying neatly on top of her scarf, was the missing gold necklace. Gasps filled the air. Clara covered her mouth dramatically. "Oh no, again?" Stacy's voice cracked. "This is not mine. Someone put it there." But the crowd didn't care. The whispers grew louder. "She's done it again. She can't be trusted." Joseph's jaw tightened. His eyes, though calm, burned with something unspoken. Disappointment? Anger? Or was it doubt? "Enough," he said firmly. "Stacy, you leave with me now. If this is truly your doing, you will answer to the police." The room went silent. The word police carried weight heavier than stone. Stacy's knees shook, her heart hammering like a drum. "I didn't do it," she whispered. "Please, believe me." Joseph didn't reply. He motioned for her to follow. As they walked through the hall, workers stared. Some smirked, others shook their heads. Stacy felt like she was being paraded through the streets for a crime she didn't commit. That night back at home, Ruth saw her sister's pale face and panicked. "Stacy, what happened? Did the boss shout at you again?" Stacy hugged her tightly. "It's worse, Ruth. They think I stole a necklace." Ruth gasped. "What? But you don't even like jewelry. You said earrings make your ears itchy." Despite her despair, Stacy laughed through tears. Ruth stomped her foot angrily. "Then they're lying. I'll go and tell them." "No," Stacy said firmly, holding her close. "This fight, it's bigger than us." When Ruth finally slept, Stacy sat alone in the dark. Her thoughts drifted once again to Naomi. She always had words of wisdom. Something inside Stacy whispered, "If anyone can help me, it's her." The morning air was heavy, as if even the sky knew something bad was about to happen. Stacy sat outside the small wooden house, her hands folded tightly in her lap. She hadn't slept. Her eyes were swollen from tears, but she tried to hide them from Ruth. "Stacy," Ruth said softly, rubbing her sister's arm, "don't be sad. Maybe the truth will come out today." Stacy smiled weakly. "I hope so, Ruth. I really hope so." Before she could say another word, a knock thundered at the door. Ruth jumped. Stacy's heart sank. She already knew. When she opened the door, 2 police officers stood outside. Their uniforms were sharp, their faces serious. Behind them was Joseph Adams, standing tall, arms folded, his eyes as cold as ever. "Are you Stacy?" one officer asked. "Yes," she whispered, her throat dry. "You are under arrest for theft. You'll need to come with us." Ruth ran forward. "No, my sister didn't steal anything. She doesn't even like shiny things. She says necklaces make her neck sweat." One officer tried not to laugh but cleared his throat. "Little girl, this is not a joke." Joseph's eyes flickered briefly at Ruth's words, but his face returned to stone. Stacy swallowed hard. "Please, sir, I swear I didn't take that necklace. Someone planted it. Please believe me." Joseph didn't reply. He simply nodded to the officers. As they took Stacy's hands and tied them loosely with rope, tears rolled down her cheeks. Neighbors gathered outside, whispering, "So it's true, she's a thief." Some shook their heads, others just stared. "Don't worry, Ruth," Stacy called as they led her away. "Be brave, I'll come back." But inside, she wasn't sure. The ride to the station was silent, except for the squeak of the police truck. Stacy sat in the back, her wrists burning against the rope. Joseph sat in the front seat, his eyes staring out the window, his jaw clenched. Stacy wanted to scream at him. "Why don't you believe me? Why can't you see the truth in my eyes?" But no words came. She only prayed silently. At the station, she was led into a small room with a wooden desk and a single chair. A bright light shone overhead. The officer dropped the necklace on the table. "Do you deny stealing this?" "Yes," Stacy said firmly. "I have never touched that necklace before. Someone put it in my bag." The officer raised an eyebrow. "A convenient excuse. Who would do that?" Stacy hesitated. Clara's face flashed in her mind, but she had no proof. I don't know." Joseph entered the room, standing behind the officer. He crossed his arms. "She had the necklace. That is a fact, but facts can sometimes lie. Let us listen carefully." Stacy stared at him, shocked. Did he just say facts can lie? Was Joseph doubting the accusation for the first time? Before she could answer, the door creaked open. A fragile voice floated in. "May I come in?" It was Naomi. Everyone turned. The old woman entered slowly, leaning on a stick, her eyes sharp despite her weak frame. She looked straight at Joseph, then at Stacy. "What are you doing here?" the officer asked, annoyed. "I came to tell the truth," Naomi said simply. Joseph frowned. "Who are you?" Naomi's lips trembled. She looked at him with a mixture of pride and pain. "I am Naomi, also known as Cynthia Adams. I am your mother." The room froze. The officer's mouth fell open. Stacy gasped, her heart nearly stopping. Even Joseph, the man of stone, blinked as if struck by lightning. "Mother?" he whispered, his voice cracking. Naomi nodded slowly. "Yes, Joseph. You have my birthmark behind your ear and in the middle of your back. That is something you alone would know. I left the house years ago, for reasons I'll explain another day. But today, I am here for her." She pointed to Stacy. "This girl is not a thief. She gave me her last coin when she and her sister had nothing. She has fed me, cared for me, treated me like a mother when no one else would. Would such a girl steal? No, she is innocent." The officer looked confused. "Madam, even if she is kind, we still found the necklace in her bag." Naomi's eyes hardened. "And do you think a kind girl is free from enemies? Someone planted it there. Look at her face. Does she look guilty? Or does she look like someone drowning in lies made by jealous hands? Do your job." Stacy's tears flowed freely. Naomi's defense felt like a shield protecting her from the whole world. For once, she wasn't alone. Joseph's face was unreadable. He looked at his mother, then at Stacy. His lips parted, but no words came. Instead, he turned sharply to the officer. "Investigate again, thoroughly. I want to know who else had access to that necklace." The officer hesitated but nodded. Naomi walked to Stacy and untied the rope from her wrists with trembling hands. "Don't cry, my child. The storm is loud, but it never lasts forever." Stacy whispered, Why did you defend me? You barely know me." Naomi smiled faintly. "Because kindness is a language I understand, and because the world must learn that not every poor person is a thief." Joseph looked at his mother with eyes filled with questions, then at Stacy with something softer than before. For the first time, He seemed unsure and vulnerable. Joseph paced across the floor like a lion trapped in a cage. His mind was a storm. Mother is alive? She has been hiding all this time? And Stacy? Could she really be innocent? His head hurt from all the questions crashing inside it. "Joseph," Naomi said gently, leaning on her stick, "you must open your eyes. Look at the girl. You think strength only comes from power, but strength also lives in kindness. This child has both." Joseph stopped pacing. His jaw tightened. Kindness does not erase evidence. Someone put that necklace in her bag, but who? Naomi gave him a long, knowing look. "Then find out, but don't let your pride blind you." Meanwhile, Clara was back at the office, pretending everything was normal. She wore her sweetest smile and typed loudly on her keyboard so everyone could hear. "Click-clack, click-clack," she muttered, as if hard work had a sound. Her friends whispered nearby. "Do you think it worked? Will Stacy be gone for good?" Clara smirked. "Of course. Poor little Stacy won't even see it coming. She'll be locked away while we move up the ladder. Easy win." But what Clara didn't know was that Joseph had asked the police to investigate. And that very afternoon, a detective entered the office quietly, watching everyone with sharp eyes. He asked each worker simple questions. "Where were you when the necklace went missing? Did you see Stacy near the manager's office? Did anyone act strangely that day?" Most of the workers shrugged, too scared to say anything. But one timid young man, Peter, fidgeted nervously. He was Clara's friend, but he hated lying. When the detective was about to leave, he secretly went to him. The detective narrowed his eyes. "Do you know something?" Peter gulped. I don't want trouble." "Trouble comes when you hide the truth," the detective said firmly. Finally, Peter whispered, "I saw Clara near Stacy's bag. She looked around before dropping something inside. But I was too scared to speak." The detective's face hardened. "Thank you." Back at the station, Stacy sat quietly when the detective returned. He whispered something in Joseph's ear. Joseph's eyes widened slightly, but his face quickly returned to stone. Stacy leaned forward, curious. What did he say? Joseph didn't answer. Instead, he turned to her. "Tell me, Stacy, if you are innocent, why do you keep smiling even when people call you a thief?" Stacy blinked, surprised by the question. Then she gave a small, tired smile. "Because if I stop smiling, I'll drown in sadness. God has been with me even during the hard times. Smiling doesn't mean I'm not hurt. It just means I still have hope." Joseph studied Stacy's face for a long moment. Something inside him cracked, like ice breaking in spring. He didn't say it out loud, but for the first time, he believed her. The next morning, Joseph called for all the workers to gather in the office. Clara strutted in confidently, her lipstick shining, her friends trailing behind like loyal shadows. Stacy stood near the back, with Naomi sitting beside her on a chair. Ruth clutched her sister's hand tightly, her big eyes darting around the room. Joseph's voice boomed. A theft took place in this company. A precious necklace was stolen and later found in Stacy's bag. But the investigation has revealed new evidence. The room went silent. Clara tried to look calm, but sweat gathered on her forehead. Joseph continued, "One of your fellow workers saw what really happened. Someone deliberately placed the necklace in Stacy's bag. That person thought lies would stay hidden, but the truth always finds light." Gasps filled the room. Workers looked at one another nervously. Clara's hands shook slightly, though she forced a smile. Joseph's eyes locked on her. "Clara, do you have something to say?" The room froze. Clara's fake smile collapsed. Her face turned pale. What? Why are you looking at me? I didn't do anything." Peter stepped forward, trembling but brave. "Tell the truth, Clara. I saw you. You put the necklace in Stacy's bag." The crowd erupted in whispers. Clara's friends backed away from her like rats leaving a sinking ship. "You liar!" Clara shouted, pointing at Peter. But her voice cracked, and everyone could see the fear in her eyes. Joseph's face was cold as ice. "We have enough evidence. Clara, you are suspended immediately. Further action will be taken." Clara's legs wobbled. For once, she had no smart words, no laughter, no power. She looked around, but no one defended her. Slowly, she was escorted out of the building, her head hanging low. When the room cleared, Joseph turned to Stacy. For the first time, his stern eyes softened. "You were right. You were innocent. And I was wrong." Stacy lowered her gaze. "I don't need your apology. I just needed the truth to be seen." Joseph opened his mouth to reply, but the words stuck. He wasn't used to being wrong, and he wasn't used to feeling admiration, especially for a simple girl like Stacy. That night, Stacy walked home with Ruth skipping beside her, humming happily. "See, Stacy, I told you the truth would win. You're like a hero in those fairy tales." Stacy smiled faintly. "Heroes get tired too, Ruth." But you were right. The truth did win. Still, deep inside, she wondered what Joseph would do next. Would he simply clear her name and walk away? The days after Clara's downfall felt lighter, like a heavy cloud had finally drifted away. The factory was calmer too. People no longer whispered behind Stacy's back. In fact, many looked at her with respect now. They had seen how she stood tall through shame, how she didn't fight back with anger, but with quiet dignity. Still, Stacy's heart wasn't fully at peace. She had been cleared, yes, but the sting of betrayal, the pain of humiliation, and the weight of almost losing everything still lived inside her. Late at night, she often stared at the ceiling and whispered, "Why me, Lord? Why must the road of kindness be so full of thorns?" One evening, there was a knock at her door. Ruth, always quick to run, jumped up and opened it. There stood Joseph Adams, not in his expensive suit this time, but in a simple shirt and trousers, looking almost human. Ruth's jaw dropped. "Oh, the boss has come to eat dinner with us. Stacy, should I set 2 spoons or 3? Or should I just bring the whole pot?" Joseph almost smiled. "Just 1 plate will do, Ruth. I'm not here for food." Ruth giggled and ran off, whispering to herself, "Boss and Stacy sitting in a tree." "Ruth," Stacy snapped, blushing furiously. "Go inside." Joseph cleared his throat, clearly uncomfortable. "May I come in?" Stacy's chest tightened. She had imagined many words from him, anger, excuses, maybe even silence, but not this. Joseph leaned forward, his eyes softer than she'd ever seen. "You showed me a strength I cannot buy, a strength that comes from love. And I admire you." Stacy swallowed hard. Her hands trembled slightly in her lap. "Admiration is not love, Joseph. And love is not a prize you give someone for surviving pain." Joseph flinched, but then nodded slowly. "You're right. Love is earned, and I don't deserve yours yet, but I wish to try." Her lips parted, but no words came. Her heart raced. The days turned into weeks, and Joseph kept coming back, not with gifts or grand promises, but with simple actions. One day, he helped Ruth with her homework. Though he nearly pulled his hair out trying to solve math problems she solved in seconds. "How do you know this? You're only 12, he groaned. Ruth laughed so hard she fell off her chair. "Mr. Joseph, even birds know 2 + 2. Another day, he helped Stacy fix a broken chair in their small home. He nearly hammered his own thumb twice, but Stacy couldn't stop laughing. So the great Joseph Adams cannot even hold a hammer? Not without an instruction manual, he admitted sheepishly, rubbing his sore thumb. Bit by bit, his walls cracked, and bit by bit, Stacy's heart softened. Naomi watched all this quietly, her old eyes twinkling. One evening, she told Stacy, "Do you know why Joseph is changing? Because love humbles even the proudest heart, and because your kindness planted a seed in him long ago." One day, the factory held a special meeting. Joseph stood before all the workers, Stacy among them. "This company nearly destroyed an innocent woman's life because of lies. Let it be known," he said, his voice firm, "that justice will always win in my watch. And let it also be known that strength is not found in greed, but in honesty and kindness." He paused, then looked directly at Stacy. "And today, I want to honor the strongest worker here, Stacy." The workers clapped, some cheering loudly. Stacy's face burned red as Joseph called her forward. "She taught me something I never learned in all my years of education or wealth," he continued. "That a person's value is not in what they own, but in how they love others." Then, in front of everyone, Joseph took a deep breath. "Stacy, I don't just admire you. I love you. Will you let me walk beside you in this life?" The room went silent. All eyes turned to her. Stacy's heart pounded. Memories rushed through her. Buying bread with her last coin, caring for Naomi, being called a thief, crying in the dark, and now this moment. She stepped forward slowly. "Joseph, I will not say yes because you're rich or because you're my boss. I say yes because you've changed, because you've shown me that even a stone can become a heart when love touches it. Yes, I will marry you." The room erupted in cheers. Ruth shouted louder than anyone, "See? I told you he liked you, Stacy." Naomi wiped tears from her eyes. "At last," she whispered, "my son has found not just a wife, but a heart that will keep him human." The wedding was simple yet beautiful. Stacy wore a modest white dress, and Joseph wore a suit, without the usual coldness in his eyes. Naomi sat proudly in the front row, her hands clasped tightly. When Joseph and Stacy exchanged vows, the whole room felt it. Not just words, but truth. A union built not on wealth, not on power, but on love, patience, and kindness tested by fire. As they walked out hand in hand, Ruth skipped beside them, beaming. "Now I have a brother, and maybe soon a puppy?" Everyone laughed. Stacy looked up at Joseph, her eyes shining. Who would have thought the stern boss and the poor worker would end up like this? Joseph smiled softly. God is the one writing love stories. We're privileged to be a part of it. And so with Naomi and Ruth at their side, Stacy and Joseph began a new chapter, not free from life's struggles, but rich in the one thing that truly mattered. A strong foundation in God with love that had been tested, love that had been earned, and love that would last.